Welcome to another VeVe Digital Collectibles Breakdown video. I'm Corey with VeVe, and today is a day for all of you philatelists, stamp lovers, and history buffs out there. The United States Postal Service releases, in honor of Women's History Month, the Women Support the War Effort stamp art on VeVe. Before we really jump into the history, let's go over the drop details. U.S. Postal Service's Women Support the War Effort stamp art will be released on Friday, March 17th at 8 a.m. Pacific Time. Classified as a rare, emitting 5,999 editions, this piece will have a price of 6 gems. And stamps are one of the very first collectible niches that I collected in, and I did that with my father, and I even busted out a first day of issue for this stamp with the gold replica. And my father is a massive World War II history buff, as his father served in that war. And the character that's being depicted on this stamp, Rosie the Riveter, or at least as we would come to call her, is a character that has definitely outlived the era in which she was created. And one thing you'll notice with this one is that as it rotates, the date included on the stamp is 1999. This uniquely makes this the oldest stamp released on the platform thus far. Issued on February 18th of 1999, this stamp originally was 33 cents, and part of the Celebrate the Century 1940 series. Depicted on this stamp is who people would commonly refer to as Rosie the Riveter. And what a lot of people don't realize is that namesake, Rosie the Riveter, was based on a song that was released in 1942 by the Paramount Music Corporation. And it was a song that was popularized because a ton of the most prolific artists of that era were playing this song, and it was a call to action. The bombing of Pearl Harbor on December 1941 saw a massive portion of the men in the United States leaving for war, and this created a growing hole in the workforce. As a result, there was an organized push by advertisement agencies and the US government to get women to fill that gap. A part of that effort was the commissioning of posters and propaganda to promote that effort. And this push was essential, and it was needed. Between the years of 1940 and 1944, the number of women in the workforce would jump by over 6 million. In a short span, women were transformed into welders, electricians, mechanics, police officers, and more. During this effort to encourage women to join the workforce, an artist by the name of J. Howard Miller would be commissioned to produce a series of work incentive posters for the Westinghouse Electric and Manufacturing Company. According to the Library of Congress, J. Howard Miller's illustration of a woman rolling up her sleeve and saying, "We can do it," had no connection with Rosie. Ironically, that poster and the other posters created by J. Howard Miller weren't very popular for the era, were only displayed for a couple of weeks, and ultimately would be largely forgotten about. On the other hand, the most popular, prolific, and agreed upon depiction of Rosie the Riveter at this point in time was actually created by Norman Rockwell. It would be featured on the cover of the Saturday Evening Post in May of 1943. So what happened? Why, whenever we think of Rosie the Riveter now, do we think of this image of her and not that one by Norman Rockwell, which was far more popular? The sad truth is that after World War II, the men would come home and the women would then be pushed right back out of the workforce. It was a return to the status quo, and women would continue to struggle to find equal footing for years to come. It wouldn't be until around the early 1980s that we would see this image resurface, and it would be, again, a call to action. That year, a Washington Post magazine article titled "Poster Art for Patriotism's Sake" would feature this J. Howard Miller illustration. The rediscovered image would become a rallying cry for women fighting for equal rights from this point forward, and the world would attach the mythology of Rosie the Riveter to the illustration. This sudden explosion of popularity and usage turned this once forgotten poster that, was hung for 2 weeks in a factory and forgotten for many, many years, and launched it into a cultural icon in the United States and beyond. So popular, in fact, that the mythology of Rosie the Riveter was attached to this image, despite its history. The image's popularity, its essential function in promoting women's rights, and its era-specific history earned it inclusion in the 1999 Celebrate the Century 1940 series from the U.S. Postal Service. While the illustrative credit for this remains with J. Howard Miller, the original artist, Carl T. Herman was the stamp designer for this particular piece. Herman worked for decades as a USPS art director and was instrumental in the design and creation of hundreds of stamp projects. As a comic book nerd, I'm a pretty big fan of Herman's Marvel Comics superhero stamps from 2006. And all of this backstory is what makes stamp collecting one of the most popular collectible niches in the entire world. Every stamp is a slice of history. And by collecting and learning that history, we gain insights into different cultures, people, eras, and ways of life. With all that being said, best of luck if you do decide to go for this one. Until the next breakdown video, keep learning, sharing, and collecting what you love. This is Corey with VeVe, signing off.